Well, that was, when I got over to States, then I had to basically brush up. And that's when I bumped into the work of Nord Davis and especially Ralph Epperson. He was just great. His work put a lot of pieces together for me. And then, of course, the great G. Edward Griffin and Eustace Mullins. It became like a study, because when I realized that the average American doesn't know anything about this, I bump into the average, I bump into occasionally to a Vietnam vet who had been through so much hell through the VA hospitals, that these guys knew, something about what was going on, especially about the federal system and the Federal Reserve and so on. And so my education began in the 90s, to sort of brush up on, okay, I've seen it in an Irish context. I've seen that one picture of tyranny, but how does this work in the American context, So as I started to study more and get into the Webster Tarpleys, you see, and even the Dr. John Coleman's, it was a long discovery to find out that this country didn't really win the War of Independence, because they let their guard down, they became so apathetic, they became so decadent and narcissistic that, it was easy pickings right from the time of, the first presidents, basically, for this federalistic group to get to insinuate itself into the body politic of America through the federal systems, to get rid of the republic, to change the Constitution, to amend it, and so forth and so on, all the stuff that you've covered yourself and so many things. This was my education to find out. But my main point was, though, is more of a historian aspect, to say, look, never forget that America is just the last in line to be taken down. The people who are doing this have colonized and colonized the world. They've been doing it for centuries of time. And my researches lead it back to Egypt. First of all, I had studied the ancient Irish myths. That helped me, with my first book on Atlantis, to get into a lot of areas there to show just how ancient this actual, oligarchy is, that they keep bloodlines, and these bloodlines are still today, and the politicians that pop their heads up every 4 years, there they are again with their bloodline connections back to the ancient royal oligarchs of Europe. But then what happened is I got more and more, into it after the first book was done. Then I started to really look at the Egyptian roots of this, and my research took me to a group that I refer to as the Atenists. It's the same group of, people would refer to, say, by the terms such as Luciferian or whatever. My term for it is Atenists. This is going back to the 14th dynasty, the 18th dynasty of Europe, 18th dynasty of Egypt, about 1400 years BC is where it all began. So I've actually traced it back to the reign of the Pharaoh Akhenaten.
Well, just to be clear, when you read mainline, even British history, they say they're related to the pharaohs. They say they are related to Moses, and the queen is coronated on Jacob's stone, and all of this, and so they really believe this. And worldwide, international royalty, even in Japan, says that the greatest queen is the royalty in England, and that they all claim they're part of that and are part of the same secret societies there. So regardless of whether it's true or not, they do claim lineage to the pharaohs.
You're absolutely spot on. And you see, it doesn't have to be necessarily just bloodline. For a certain amount of the top boys, it is a bloodline connection. For everybody else that serves this monster, it's an ideological, connection. Equally as bad, equally as pernicious. These are not people who serve the good of the human race or for the uplift of the human race. These are ancient pharaohs who've kept bloodline dynasties, and people better believe that they have not gone away. The different houses of Europe that I address, you see, and the symbolism that they use. So as I started to track this back, it started to explain these things about, like you say, the symbolism behind the coronation, and all the various other symbolism and regalia that we see throughout all of Europe as well as Britain. And it was fascinating to see that, how it all went back to this particular individual and his sort of megalomania, this Akhenaten, and his basically solar cult. These were worshippers of the sun. They were worshippers of what I refer to as the dark side of the sun. And, their generation, they were expurged finally from Egypt. They had basically committed so much desecration on the land of Egypt that finally, in the reign of Akhenaten, the people of Egypt rose up and basically exiled these guys. And then history loses track of them. They just disappear. Whether you're coming at this from a biblical point of view, as you said, through the Moses story, or you're coming at it through alternative historical approaches, basically they're meant to have fallen off the map, and history pays them no more mind. My work picks up on the fact that after they were exiled, after this famous exodus, they did not fade away, and that these people are instrumental behind the, powers in Greece.
All right, stay there. We'll be back in 3 minutes. Michael Bessarian, stay with me.